रिफ्रेश करना है।
कहाँ पे?
ये रिफ्रेश हो गया, ये लाइव आ गई, लाइव इवनिंग वाले देखो।
लाइव पे तो
हाँ रुक जाओ, लग रहा है।
बच्चे कहाँ से एंट्री कर रही है?
ठीक है,
मैं कराऊंगा आपको एंट्री का।
निशान 2 मिनट दे दिया।
Hi friends, so please close your eyes for a moment. So, a quick recap. What did we discuss in the last lecture? Brother in black t-shirt. Yes. Yes. What did we discuss in the last lecture, beta? Yeah? Beti, what did we discuss in the last lecture? Sorry? Okay, what is culture? Great. Tell me more.
Whatever aspects of life, like our eating habits, clothing habits, language,
Huh. All those aspects of our lives, like eating habits, etc., where do we pick it up from? Yes, so that should be integral to your understanding of culture, na? Okay, that we pick up from the society or learn from the society. So the culture is, give me like some of its characteristics, if I may call them that. It is man-made. It is organic or dynamic. It is transmitted from one generation to the next. It's a living entity, dynamic, we discussed that. Or it is shared amongst the members of the society. Great. Then we discussed what? Then we began with discussing the emergence of sociology. So tell me about the emergence of sociology.
so during 19th century, when Europe was going through modernization, because of French Revolution and Industrial Revolution, there was very sudden and dynamic changes which were going on in the society, which created chaos.
Hmm.
To understand those processes of modernization and what was the problem related with it, this discipline emerged.
Very nicely and very briefly you have encapsulated about the emergence of sociology. Well done. ठीक है. So can you tell me, brother, about the changes due to the French Revolution? Yes? Not you. Yes, you. Sorry, but not you. Brother, in specs. Huh. Very good. France was established as a republic. Okay, these were the new ideals which governed their socio-political lives: liberty, equality, and fraternity. The powers of the church were increased, curtailed, yes. Specifically, there was a separation of church and state, what we call secularism. ठीक है, और ठीक है, thank you. Brother, at the back. Yes, tell me some French philosophers who were analyzing these changes. Auguste Comte, Saint Simon, Durkheim, great. Then what changes took place due to the Industrial Revolution? At the back, in blue. Yes. Not you, sorry. One behind you. One next to you. Yes. Okay, replacement of human labor in the process of production with machinery or mechanization of production. Sorry? Capitalism emerged. Great. Continue, Betty.
After that, standardized goods started getting produced and the prices went down. However, the repercussions were not that good because the divide between the rich and poor widened even more.
Great.
Became richer and the poor became even more poor. So, in order to overcome this, the workers started uniting as a union, and the repercussions were not that good. It started in one place and spread across Europe.
ठीक है. Can you, were you able to hear her? So she talked about the rich-poor divide or class inequalities. She talked about increase in the quantum of production. Yeah. What else happened due to the Industrial Revolution? Betty? Yes?
So, consumption culture.
Consumption culture emerged. What else?
So there was surplus of production.
Surplus of production.
Labor workforce went down because
What do you mean workforce went down?
because the machines were more used. They were more widely
Unemployment.
Yes, unemployment.
Okay.
kind of,
ठीक है.
was on the rise.
What else, brother?
There was standardization
Standardization of products, family nuclearization, development of slums. Continue, please, brother. So colonization also received an impetus. ठीक है, great. Name some scholars who were studying these changes in England. Socrates? Huh? नहीं नहीं नहीं. He was living in a very different place in a different era. अच्छा, बताया नहीं. ठीक है, ठीक है. कार्ल मार्क्स. ठीक है. Herbert Spencer. Marx was not English, but he was living in England. ठीक है, he was German, but जर्मनी ने उनको बेदखल कर दिया था. फिर वो इंग्लैंड में अपना बसेरा कर रहे थे. ठीक. So this, sorry, Spencer. जी, Herbert Spencer. ठीक है. Yes. हाँ. So any doubts? I think this is what we had discussed. ठीक है. Yeah. Any doubts? क्या? क्या न्यूक्लियर फैमिली की वजह से पॉपुलेशन बढ़ा था? नॉट नेसेसरली. द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द फैमिली चेंज्ड. Population rose or increased due to improvements in life expectancy, due to better science and technology or medicines, vaccinations. उन सब की वजह से longevity लोगों की बढ़ी थी. Better food availability की वजह से famines etc. कम हो जाते थे. ठीक है. Yes. What else? Yes. Okay, for those who couldn't have heard her, especially online students, her question is, we had mentioned earlier that when society changed due to these revolutions in Europe, the earlier branches of knowledge were unable to address those changes or explain them properly. So she is asking what were those tools, earlier tools which were used, and why they fell short. Yeah. So the answer to that is earlier branches of knowledge could be the older disciplines such as law, political science, ethics. Are you with me? Philosophy. These were other branches of knowledge which already existed before the birth of sociology. Why they were unable to? Because they were sectional in their approach. In other words, they didn't look at society as a whole. They focused on a segment of the society. Economists focusing on the economy, lawgivers focusing on the legal aspects, etc. So we required a discipline which would take somewhat of a bird's eye view or a more holistic view. Okay, and were able to appreciate the interconnections between the various social arrangements. Secondly, the approach before sociology was not very scientific, not much based on empirical evidence. So it was a lot of writings about society which did exist, various aspects of society. They were sectional, and secondly they were more in the nature of how things should be. For example, if you've read the Manusmriti, have you read that wonderful text? It talks about what should be the nature of the man-woman relationship, or the ruler-rule relationship, or the relationship between different castes, and so on. Likewise, say if you read Plato, you will find he talks about this philosopher king, or perfect, who's the perfect ruler, how he should be, the nature of the perfect state, and so on. Yes. Yeah, continue. let me rephrase that. These sciences emerged and made very rapid strides. We will be discussing all of it possibly today. Made very rapid strides, and that really influenced the development of sociology. Okay, so sociologists, for example, the early sociologists borrowed from biology, what we call the organic analogy, or comparing the society to, say, a human body, okay, or an organism's body. Likewise, from physics and chemistry, they picked up the scientific method, as it were. Beti? Sorry? During the period of the... let me put it this way. These revolutions, for example, the French Revolution was premised upon these ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. But gender equality was much slower to catch up. Okay? So, for instance, women received the right to vote or suffrage later than men belonging to different, So, earlier there were great restrictions on voting, who had the right to vote. Okay, so, for example, there would be property qualifications. Only those with a certain amount of property could vote in some olden times. Gradually, those were relaxed. Then voting rights were relaxed for, say, men of color. Okay, in a white-dominated society, only whites had. So later on, colored people or blacks, etc., got voting rights. So also women. Okay, we'll be discussing about this thing, the position of women, and even the impact of industrial revolution, etc., on them. Some feminist scholars have pointed out or suggested that the industrial revolution, what do you think? Did it empower women or did it disempower them? Why empower? Now they can work. That's the intuitive understanding. But there's this very famous work by a feminist scholar. She suggests that women got trapped in the mother housewife role in the aftermath of the industrial revolution. Earlier they were participating verily in the economic activities. But after industrial revolution, men started seeing them as a threat, due to limited job opportunities. So men developed this ideology of, housewife, or, this notion that a woman's place belongs in the home. Care. That's a slight digression, very frankly. So we'll come to it at a later time. Chale जीवन में आगे? Yeah? Any other thing? Let's take some online doubts. One question is, what was the relation between collectivism, individualism and inequalities in French society prior to revolution? Let me just briefly state that society was dominated by a collectivist orientation. Individualism was suppressed. So individuals were supposed or expected to bow down to the individualism. What these terms mean? Collectivism means the emphasis is on collectivity or a larger entity than the individual. Individualism means individual is given priority. Okay, that the society exists for the individual, not the other way around. That is individualism. What about my rights, my freedom, my choices? Okay. So before the French Revolution, there was a greater emphasis on collectivism. After the revolution, that emphasis shifted to individualism. Yeah. Inequalities were considered as natural and a given. People were considered as inherently equal or unequal? Unequal. What's the difference between a subject and a discipline? None. They're like synonymous terms. The scholars who were studying English society, Karl Marx, Herbert Spencer. How is communism related to industrial revolution? Communism is an ideology which talks about roughly equality amongst the members of the society. Karl Marx, in his study of English workers, was greatly inspired by their plight, right? And he popularized this concept of communism, or an egalitarian society, or a society of equals. We'll be discussing his ideology and his writings at length. This is just a brief this thing. So I hope that addresses most of your questions, friends. अब चलते हैं जीवन में आगे. चलिए. तो लिखिए. I'll be dictating you a bit on this thing, modernization of Europe and emergence of sociology, and specifically the impact of French and industrial revolutions. The discipline of sociology emerged in the 19th century in Europe in response to the socio-political conditions that were then prevalent. Full stop. The French and the industrial revolutions had the combined effect of giving birth to the which society? Egalitarian. Modern society, not egalitarian for God's sake, yeah? है ना? Egalitarian means where everybody is equal. After the Industrial Revolution, there were clear class distinctions. In fact, we talked about very stark inequalities. Right? So it was not an egalitarian society. Gave birth to the modern society. Full stop. Next para. The French Revolution in bracket write its time period, which was 1789 to 1799, bracket close, significantly impacted the nature of the state. Comma, its relationship with the church. And spawned the ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. Spawned matlab, it's an English word, not a sociological term. It means to give birth to or to result in. Okay. The ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. Full stop. Next para. The Industrial Revolution gave rise to the industrial capitalist economy. characterized by increase in productivity, comma, mass-based production, comma, skill specialization, and expansion of trade and commerce. Full stop. It also led to large-scale migration from rural areas to the industrial towns and cities, comma, growth of slums, and the labor movement. Full stop. The Industrial Revolution also resulted in the nuclearization of the family. Nuclearization of the family. Comma, a sense of loneliness and social isolation amongst industrial workers, and emergence of new social classes such as the capitalist class, the capitalists, and industrial workers. Full stop. Consequently, comma, the traditional social order collapsed and made way for the rise of a new one. ठीक है? Next para. The existing branches of knowledge seemed inadequate I repeat, the existing branches of knowledge appeared inadequate and ill-equipped to make sense of these transformative changes. Full stop. Old patterns of living, and traditional modes of thought now seemed outdated. Full stop. Old patterns of living and traditional modes of thought now seemed outdated. Full stop. The sense of security and continuity associated with the old order was now replaced by an unseen uncertainty. Full stop. Is the speed all right? Are you able to keep pace? How many of you think I'm going too fast? Raise your hands. I won't cut it. It's okay. The more the merrier, because only then will I slow down. If many people are finding me fast, if only one or two are finding me fast, I won't slow down. Right? So please raise your hands if you think I'm going too fast. One, two, three, 4. I think that's a repetition. 4. Write faster, guys. क्या करूँ मैं? That's so less. Otherwise, we all get slowed down. So, write faster. And what you can also do is, if you miss out on something, leave blank space there and move on. Otherwise, you tend to remain like piche and trying to catch up. Okay? And you fill that up later on. And are you able to make sense? Because there's nothing new in whatever we've written. We've already discussed this. Right? Next para. How many of you have got tired of writing? Raise your hands, it's okay. None? Very good. Write much more then. Till you get tired. Okay. New social problems arose. New social problems arose. Dash. The industrial towns and cities were overpopulated. And urban resources were under immense strain. Immense strain. Tanav, dabav. I'm sure you can appreciate that when a city has too many people to cater to, all of its infrastructure, etc., would seem somewhat excessively burdened and unable to cater. Do you know of any city where such conditions exist? Delhi, yeah, also Mumbai. Let's take the example of where we sitting, Delhi. Which of our urban resources are like under a lot of strain in Delhi? किस चीज की कमी है? Yeah, area. So land you're saying is expensive, huh? Rents you're paying very high. What else? Water, पानी की भी किल्लत है. We are literally flooded now, yeah. Huh? See. Huh? Potable water is a problem. Or clean air is a problem. Or sanitation. You like, sir, आप एक पूछो हम 1000 बताएंगे, है ना? You name a thing and it will be under strain. Yeah? What? हमें भी बता दो, आपस में बात कर रहे हो. क्या? हाँ. Transport, absolutely. So you get the picture, right? When a city industrializes at a fast pace, it does put a strain on its resources because there are too many people coming in for jobs, etc., or education, which the city infrastructure is unable to cater to. ठीक है? लिखते जाइए. What's the last thing we've written? पूरा तो थोड़ा तो बोल दो. हाँ, urban resources were under immense strain. Full stop. The living conditions of the working class in the urban areas were how? Sorry? Pathetic. हाँ लिख लो. सही बोले हैं. Full stop. Rampant industrial conflict. Rampant industrial conflict. What do you understand by industrial conflict? So the tiff, the clash between the management and the workers in a factory. Right? That is what is industrial conflict. On what issues does this conflict typically arise? So workers would want higher wages, better work conditions, insurance, fewer or regulated work hours, right? Compensation for industrial accidents, etc. Or if any worker is chucked out unceremoniously, right? All of that. Full stop डाल के हमने लिखा है rampant industrial conflict, right? Comma. New diseases due to pollution and poor sanitation. Comma. A rise in crime rates and glaring inequalities became commonplace in the industrial cities. Why should this urbanization result in an increase in crime rates? Or you tell me intuitively, especially those of you who've been in villages, where would you expect a higher crime rate, in the cities or in the villages? Cities. Why? Brother? So he's suggesting in the villages there is more of community support in case of disprivilege or extreme want, but in the cities people are left to fend for themselves. There is no community support, and hence people would have no option but to take to crime, especially the disprivileged. Brother? Anonymity. Build on that.
So in villages there is a stigma of public shame always involved because you know people around you, but in cities you kind of get an anonymity.
So anonymity provides basically a cover for various crimes in the cities. In the villages people would know each other, and that itself would kind of be a deterrent to crime. बेटी?
So in cities there is a lot of type of employments and there is a lot of financially capable people. But in villages, mostly they have common profession.
So inequalities are more glaring, wider in the cities. That also builds resentment. Yes.
It can also be a reason that the anger is really increased in the cities because the resources are very less. So when communities are really fighting for the less adequate resources, the anger can, result in crimes.
So city people are more angry in general.
Not
Huh?
really, but it can result in like kind of hatred.
ठीक है. समथिंग लाइक रोड रेज. हाँ, दिमाग खराब हो गया गाड़ी में फंसे हुए. निकाल लिया डंडा. हाँ, या shortcut to become. So why won't people take that shortcut in the villages? That's the question, no? That shortcut would be there in the villages also.
because we don't have the same resources in the villages.
Or lesser inequalities. Huh? We won't say villages aren't like these perfect egalitarian societies. But ठीक है, I get this thing. Yes? You raise your hand and then, brother. Huh? He's saying there's more financial burden on people in the cities, compelling them to take to crime. तो आते क्यों हो शहर? गांव में रहो, जीवन बढ़िया है तो. yes? Higher cost of living in the cities. Huh? That's what he's also suggesting. Very nice. He's saying cities have more of a consumption culture. In villages, people more, have a subsistence orientation. कि 2 वक्त की रोटी मिल जाए गांव में बहुत है. बट शहर में people are very aspirational. बहुत महत्वाकांक्षाएं बहुत बड़ी होती हैं. सबको मॉलों के अंदर जाके मैकडोनल्ड्सों में खाना खाना होता है. Which requires money. Yes. ठीक है. So we get the picture. ठीक है. Continue. Next para. It was to analyze these transformations in European society and address these new social problems. That the discipline of sociology emerged. ठीक है. Full stop. Social philosophers like Comte, Saint Simon, and Durkheim took a keen interest in developing a scientific analysis of the turmoil and chaos in France. Full stop. in England, scholars like Spencer, were making efforts on similar lines. Full stop. Marx, MARX, not KS, Marx and who? Sorry? Not Spencer. Marx ka jigri. Engels. Yes. Marx and Engels. They were like collaborators on a lot of works, co-authors of many works. He was a very close friend, and he literally financed Marx's stay in England. Marx wasn't into earning much money, so this guy used to finance his life, literally. Very close. They're like Jay and Viru, okay, like Marx and Engels. Marx and Engels analyzed the exploitative nature of industrial capitalism and traced its historical development. Traced its historical development. Full stop. In short, nearly all of the early social thinkers, लिख लो ना, nearly all of the early social thinkers were keenly engaged in understanding the nature of the modern industrial society and finding solutions to the emergent social concerns. ठीक है? This is how we write. I have really not shared anything new, really, except for paraphrasing what we had discussed in the last lecture, to give you a sense how we proceed with writing. Do we take a break now or later? Later? ठीक है. Then let us continue. अब ये बताइए, how did the French and industrial revolutions take place, friends? Did the people of France one fine day think कि बहुत हो गया ये राजा वाजा, चलो इनके गले काट देते हैं? हाँ? And how did the industrial revolution take place? Did the inventor of the spinning jenny think one fine day, बेबात लोग इतना अपना, they expend so much energy. Let me develop this machinery. This term revolution, when we use it, it has this sense of urgency or, here and now. कि बस तत्काल हो गया. Yes or no? Which is somewhat misleading. In the sense, revolutions may be short-lived, but they don't happen in a jiffy. Please appreciate, revolutions literally overthrow the existing social order and create a new kind of a system in its place. Any existing socio-political order has a lot of legitimacy of its own. Are you with me? It has wide acceptance in the society. People take it for a given. Monarchy was a long running political system. Yes or no? He was Louis the 16th. Can you imagine? Bourbon dynasty was a very long ruling dynasty in France. So any existing system would have developed a supporting ideology and justification, rationale. So how can it be uprooted completely in a sudden revolutionary upsurge? Revolutions don't happen overnight. Please appreciate. The intellectual foundations for a revolution have to be first created. The revolution, the occurrence of the revolution will have to be justified in the minds of the participants and the people at large. Are you with me? Only then, you will need some way of challenging the legitimacy of the monarchical form of government, for instance, before killing the king. We also have had rulers in our country. Raja hote the. Yes or no? How is monarchical rule justified? In many parts of the world, monarchy would be justified, say, as divine rule. It's like the gods diktat. So kings in many places would claim to be God's representatives on earth, or God incarnates. कि साक्षात भगवान ही है. वो नहीं था 300 मूवी में वो एक जो बंदा आता था बड़ा ही ऑड सा, या Xerxes शायद, something like that. So Egyptian pharaohs also would claim that, either that they, likewise in India they would say we are Suryavanshi or Chandravanshi or Agnivanshi. We have some sort of a divine origin or legitimacy. And we've been ruling for so many years for the public good, and so on and so forth. Just like today, friends, you can appreciate which political system has the greatest legitimacy or is considered, as obviously the best. धन्यवाद भैया. आज के जमाने में किस पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम का बोलबाला है? Democracy. Now, is democracy the only possible political system, only possible way to organize the political life of a community? Clearly not. You can have a military junta like in Myanmar. You can have a single party dominance like in China. You can have so many things. Now, a theocratic state. You can have an autocracy. So many variations are there. Options are there. Can you imagine shifting to any one of them? If I would say, यार India को ना theocracy बना देते हैं. We are a Hindu majority, after all. Let us become a Hindu state, not just a Hindu Rashtra, but a Hindu state. Would that be good or acceptable? या मोदी जी को राजा घोषित कर देते हैं, हाँ? या राहुल गांधी, if that's what you please. Democracy has a very strong ideological basis in the people's minds. So no other system today appears logical, beneficial, or preferable. Yes or no? Likewise, then monarchy had a very strong ideological basis, legitimacy associated, which was running since centuries. Democracy to relatively new form of government hai with its the kind of democracy we see today. So how was its legitimacy challenged? That intellectual basis for the occurrence of the French and industrial revolutions took place or was created during the period of enlightenment. Look at it this way, friends. If Comte coined the term sociology, when? ये तो सभी को पता है ना? This was, what was the context or the trigger? हाँ बोल दो. The French and the industrial revolutions. Then the basis for the intellectual, ideological basis for the occurrence of the French and industrial revolutions was laid down by what is called the Age of Reason or the Enlightenment period in European history. So during these, period of 18th century roughly, during the 17th and 18th centuries, several new philosophies were outlined which challenged the legitimacy of whether it was the authority of the church or of the monarch, the traditional system, and laid down an alternative, the legitimacy or the ideological basis of an alternative form of socio-political organization of the people's lives, meaning democracy, republican forms of government, etc. That is why the French Revolution became possible. Are you with me? We'll discuss about this in detail. I'm just giving you a peek. So some philosophers came up with some theories or explanations about the political system which challenged the assumption that monarchy is beneficial, that monarchy is natural and the obvious way of organizing the political life of the community. Are you with me? And they provided an alternative, which was democratic and republican form of government. The writings of Enlightenment era philosophers also paved or created the intellectual foundation for the Industrial Revolution, or simply the emergence of industrial capitalism. Okay? What were those writings? We'll discuss as we proceed. In other words, friends, during this period, some philosophers were literally writing things against the king. How dare they? How dare they question the authority of the church or the monarch? For that, friends, that cannot be done unless and until there is a conducive social climate for these thinkers to challenge the prevailing forms of government or power. In other words, friends, enlightenment was preceded by and made possible by the changes in European society during or spanning several centuries during the period of Renaissance. Renaissance was a centuries-long period of social and cultural change in Europe. Spanning near about 350 to 400 years. Revolutions, when you use the term revolutions, लगता है just हो गया. लोग उठ खड़े हुए और काट दिया. ऐसे ही नहीं काट देते. Are you with me? The society literally is prepared over a centuries long period in terms of people's thinking, so as to make the revolutions centuries later possible. We'll discuss at some length what the Renaissance was about. But briefly, what do you understand literally? Have you heard the term Indian Renaissance? We all have read it. What was the Indian Renaissance? When was it? What was it? कब हुआ था? Sorry? Which period? 19th century. And if you have to name one guy as the main, Roy. है ना? So everybody gets what was happening around that time when you say Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So it was that period of social religious reforms during the 19th century, mediated by the colonial state presence. है ना? So what do you understand? Forget the European Renaissance for a bit, since we are more aware of the Indian Renaissance. सबने पढ़ा है Raja Ram Mohan Roy and social religious reforms? What was the Indian Renaissance? Or what do you mean by Renaissance when you use the phrase Indian Renaissance? Brother? You're discussing what happened. I'm asking you for the literal meaning of the term Renaissance. It literally means rebirth. The term Renaissance literally means rebirth. When you say rebirth, yani punarjanam, right? Such an Indian concept, but we borrowed from Europe. But rebirth means that something must have been born earlier, which is now being reborn. So what was being reborn during the, say, the Indian Renaissance? It was a rebirth of what? Kis cheez ka punarjanam? Rebirth of what? कैसे customs? सती प्रथा वगैरह. Thought. More specific. It affected thought, it affected the practice of certain customs. But what was, brother? Sorry? No, not self-realization. Huh? Society, ethics and values, religion, knowledge. It was a rebirth of traditional or old knowledge. Knowledge which had been somewhat lost. Okay, now was being revisited. So which old knowledge had been lost, say in India? Go back to the Vedas. So revisiting ancient Indian knowledge by a reinterpretation of the ancient Sanskritic texts. That was the essence of the Indian Renaissance. Yes? So they said if you read the Vedas, it does not sanction sati pratha or gender inequality. It does, or Indian scriptures do provision for widow remarriage and other progressive things, etc. Right? So it meant rebirth of old knowledge in that sense. Similarly in Europe, and that is where the Renaissance first took place. Renaissance was a rebirth of knowledge of old Europe, found in ancient European texts, written in ancient languages. Like in India it was Sanskritic texts. Similarly in Europe it was texts written in old Latin or Greek, okay, which were revisited. Are you with me? And revisited, and then there was a kind of a flowering of sorts in different aspects of culture. You know, major strides Europe made in literature, art, architecture, sciences, religion, various aspects. Are you with me? The period preceding the Renaissance in European history, don't draw like this in your answer sheet, it's just because of lack of space in your notes, draw a straight line, okay, is known as the Dark Ages. Why were they dark? Dark Ages were termed such because they were considered a period of ignorance, cultural decline, stagnancy, right? एक तरह का यूरोपियन सोसाइटी का पतन हुआ था. So point is, going back thousands of years, The roots of sociology can be traced back to the period of ancient Greek philosophers, writing more than 2000 years back. So sociology, frankly friends, is a pretty new discipline, young discipline. The word sociology itself having been coined less than 200 years back. Are you with me? In fact, sociology is widely regarded as a latecomer in the committee of disciplines. बाकी सारे disciplines पहले establish हो गए थे, हम ही almost सबसे late से हुए हैं. But its roots are very old, going back more than 2 millennia before the formal establishment of the discipline in the 19th century. So we will be discussing how sociology was impacted by these various phases of European history. The immediate trigger or context was provided by the French and industrial revolutions and the changes they brought about. But the discipline has very old roots, going back to the period of the ancient Greek philosophers. ये टाइमलाइन बना लीजिए. Should I move? And make it better than this. I did it because of paucity of space. Shall we proceed? Done? Should I erase it? So now let us try to appreciate or trace the origins of the discipline of sociology, not just to the immediate context of the 19th century, but several centuries before. You don't get a question from the ancient period, just to be sure. But since we are at it, we might as well touch upon. Okay? More than 2000 years back, in the tiny Greek city-states, philosophers like who? Socrates. Socrates का बेटा प्लेटो. बेटा एज इन चेला. और प्लेटो का एरिस्टोटल. And several others. Okay, these three being the most popular. They wrote at length about various social issues. At length. About various social issues. Plato, for instance, friends, he wrote extensively. He was a very, what should I say? He wrote at length, okay? In his works like The Republic, The Laws, Plato dealt at length with various social issues, such as the nature of the state. The nature of the state. How should the government be? how should be the ideal ruler? What is the role of the education system in society? How's the relationship between different social classes? Aristotle also wrote extensively about citizenship, the man-woman relationship, several such issues were taken up by these ancient philosophers. What's that? Is that of any relevance to sociology or not? Why? Please appreciate many of the issues that these guys were writing about more than 2000 years back. Modern sociology is grappling with even today. Contemporary sociologists dedicate their careers to exploring the very same themes which the ancient Greek philosophers were exploring more than 2 millennia back. For example, Plato was writing about the relationship between what we call natural inequality and social inequality. Plato was writing about the relationship between natural inequality and social inequality. What do you mean by these terms or phrases? Natural inequality means, the differences that nature has endowed us with. Nature has made us different. You pick up any two people, say two students. Okay, no, forget two man and woman, say two men. Are they same? No. One will be taller than the other, fairer than the other, prettier than the other, more muscular than the other. All of that. Yes or no? More hairy than the other, more intellectually gifted than the other, more spiritually inclined than the other. So many things. So people are naturally made different. This is what we term as natural inequalities. Differences in a population or amongst people endowed by nature. Yes or no? Social inequalities refer to differences between people in terms of wealth, power and prestige. समाज में कोई किसी से ज्यादा अमीर है या गरीब है, किसी की ज्यादा इज्जत है, किसी की कम इज्जत है. Yes or no? Someone is more powerful than the other. Are you with me? So are social inequalities based upon natural inequalities is a question that has been troubling philosophers and social scientists alike for more than 2000 years. What's your take? Are social inequalities based on natural inequalities? In other words, are richer people, let me put it this way, are richer or more successful people in society also more naturally gifted or naturally endowed, if I may use that, call it, put it that way. Yes. No. Differences in wealth would classify as social inequality. But the point you're making is that I am richer than another guy simply because of the accident of my birth. I may not be more intelligent, more powerful, more gifted, whatever, than him. Yes or no? So, we'll get into this larger debate later on, but I want to bring your attention to this aspect. Okay, that these are the themes that they were writing about 2000 years back, even today we are writing about. What is your sense? Any guesses? I'm not delving into their writings at length because they are not relevant for our purposes. Maybe in ethics or somewhere you will read. But what is your sense? What they wrote then, does it hold much relevance today? Or is it mostly outdated? A lot of it would today appear very, very out of sync with modern thinking. I'll put it this way. Aristotle, for instance, was of the view that women should not be given citizenship because they are chanchal man ki. Okay. They have a volatile predisposition. They are fickle. Okay, so from today's viewpoint, Aristotle would be termed as a misogynist, as a woman hater. Hai na? He even argued the poor should not be given the citizenship rights. Again, very out of sync with today's modern thinking. You do not base citizenship on property or wealth qualifications. Right? That seems so blatantly unfair. So many of their writings appear outdated, but nevertheless, those were the earliest stirrings or earliest writings on many of the same social issues that modern sociology grapples with. ठीक? तो ये लिख लो बस अपने शब्दों में. Writings of ancient scholars, philosophers and lawgivers in the East and in the West were extensive. I know you guys are thinking, bola ki apne shabdon mein, and then you started dictating. That is how life is. Were extensive, covering a wide range of social issues, ranging from the nature of the state to the system of inequality, comma, the man-woman relationship, and family life, to citizenship. The role of education, to the political economy. Full stop. Modern sociology often grapples with some of the very same questions, that the ancient philosophers tried to address. that the ancient philosophers tried to address. ठीक, तो डिफरेंस क्या है? अगर हम भी वही छानबीन कर रहे हैं जो वो 2000 साल पहले कर रहे थे, is there any qualitative difference or is it just rehashing, old wine in a new bottle kind of a thing? कोई अंतर है भी या नहीं सोशियोलॉजी और एंशिएंट फिलॉसफी में? क्या है? दैट इज फाइन, बट व्हाट इज द चेंज इन द नेचर ऑफ द अप्रोच टू एनालाइजिंग सोसाइटी? सॉरी, one very important or key difference was the methodology which was applied. Absolutely right. The early writings were more in the nature of, and hence the name philosophy. They were more interested in kind of chalking out a vision of a ideal or a perfect society, which was not so much the case with sociology, modern sociology. And very importantly, as she rightly pointed out, it was the scientific method which was a key differentiator in the approach of modern sociologists towards the same social issues compared to the early or ancient philosophers. ठीक? There was an important difference, I repeat, in the approach to the analysis of society. Modern sociologists, including founding fathers, emphasized upon the scientific method. ठीक. With that, we take a well-deserved break. Hi friends, let's continue. So where were we? We had discussed briefly about the ancient Greek philosophers, right? Moving on, and that thing is gone. Discussing the impact of the period of Renaissance. What was the Renaissance about? Dark ages were dark, so not much to discuss there, or they were not considered as very impactful, right? They were rather a period of societal decline, cultural decadence, everything, right? So now let us try to appreciate the period of Renaissance. What was Renaissance about? Any idea about European Renaissance? Anybody read any bit of world history, European history? What was the Renaissance about? Yeah, but more than that. All of this, modernity was the cumulative result of the cumulative effect of the Renaissance and the age of reason, enlightenment, the French and Industrial Revolution. Specifically, what was the Renaissance about? Religious knowledge was challenged. Domination of church increased or decreased or what? Decreased, okay. Sorry? Rationalism. Correct. Into more popular languages. Huh? Yes? You had something to add? No. Raise your hand so that, yeah. Eradication of feudalism. Challenges began to be posed to feudalism rather than its full eradication. But yeah. Okay, so notion of afterlife was challenged. Agitation against the corrupt practices of the Roman Catholic Church and resistance to their meddling in political affairs.
Sort of taking the religious affairs to masses rather than Gutenberg press incident, for example.
ठीक है.
That was a catalyst.
ठीक है. So a greater say of the laity or the lay persons, common persons in religious matters than it being, remaining in the shikanja of the religious figureheads.
So
Voyages and explorations, such as
the Dutch East India Company was formed during this time,
hmm,
and even the British later on during the 1600. So people really wanted to explore more, and they also the trade increased a lot. So
trade also increased, absolutely.
So the cultural interactions increased.
Yes, brother. Wonderful emphasis on humanism rather than on divine aspects. Absolutely, brother. Spread of knowledge. Okay, that's too generic, but yeah. ठीक है. So yes, Renaissance was about all of this. In the main, friends, Renaissance was a period of immense strides, immense developments taking place in different realms of art and culture. It was kind of a rebirth of ancient knowledge, and based upon which various aspects, whether it was literature, whether it was art, whether it was architecture, drama, religion, science, voyages and explorations, as she rightly pointed out. To understand, get the feel of Renaissance, I'll just share some Renaissance figures. Shakespeare, people we must have heard of, right? So Shakespeare was writing around this time. Leonardo da Vinci, ठीक है? Michelangelo, this thing, and क्या नाम है उसका, all your people like scientists like Newton, Copernicus, yeah, voyagers like Vasco da Gama, religious figures like John Calvin, Martin Luther, they all belong to the Renaissance period. Now these guys belong to very disparate fields, different fields. ना कोई साइंस में, कोई रिलीजन में, कोई ड्रामा लिख रहा है, कोई स्टैचूज बना रहा है. What is it that links all of them, or what is it, why they all referred to as belonging to some common, what was common to them? That is something we need to appreciate. Are you aware of their works, what these guys have done? They're all very famous fellows. What is Shakespeare known for? कौन सा ड्रामा? रोमियो एंड जूलियट. और सॉरी, हाँ, हैमलेट नहीं सुना हमने, रोमियो एंड जूलियट हमें पता है, ठीक है, बट यस ऑल्सो हैमलेट, हाँ, मर्चेंट ऑफ वेनिस, हाँ. और ये तुम्हारा जो लियोनार्डो डा विंची है, हु इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द टाइटैनिक वाला लियोनार्डो डी कैप्रियो, मोनालिसा है ना, वी ऑल सीन दैट मोनालिसा. और वास्को डी गामा क्यों जानते हो? हाँ, सी रूट्स एंड वॉयजेस. कोलंबस कहां के लिए निकले, कहीं पहुंच गए, बट कहीं ना कहीं पहुंच गए, ठीक है. सो दे फाउंड न्यू रूट्स, कनेक्टिंग यूरोप टू डिफरेंट न्यू प्लेसेस, और प्लेसेस विच वर न्यू फॉर देम, ठीक है. दीज गाइज, आई मेंशन सम रिलीजियस फिगर्स लाइक मार्टिन लूथर, जॉन कैल्विन. हैव यू हर्ड ऑफ देम? हाँ, the Martin Luther you have heard of is a different one actually. This one only? हाँ, so Protestant, absolutely, Reformation. Right? There are two Martin Luthers. One is Martin Luther King Jr., who was a 20th century black civil rights activist in the US. Not him. This is a Renaissance figure, Martin Luther के नाम से, who was one of the key figures in the Protestant Reformation, which was basically a challenge to, as one of you was pointing out, to the authority of the Catholic Church. It was a reform movement. Okay, like we had our Arya Samaj, Brahmo Samaj kind of a thing, where they challenged the, Brahminical superiority and the Brahminical interpretation of the scriptures, something similar. Okay, crude analogy, but something similar. Protestant reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin, they challenged the interpretation of the Christian Bible by the Catholic Church. Okay. Like our reformers were arguing that, Hinduism has become very ritual laden and unnecessarily in the control of the priestly class. Somewhat similarly, these guys were arguing that Christianity has become excessively, and the church was a very corrupt. They were literally selling, the Catholic Church was literally selling what was called indulgences. Simply, चर्च को पैसा दो और मुक्ति पाओ, like that. So they were like, this is too much, right? And these Protestant reformers, they argued against the unnecessary hierarchy of church officials that created a distance between man and God. These guys argued, if we all are equally the children of God, so why should I, one child of God, require the mediation of another child of God, the priest or the Pope? Are you with me? So they argued for the common people forming a direct relation with the Creator. It was not so much challenging religion, but more of challenging the religious authority of the Catholic Church and their interpretation of the Bible. Are you with me? Taking religion closer to the people. During Renaissance, there was a commercial revolution. Renaissance period also coincided with the commercial revolution. Commercial revolution in the sense, friends, the company form of organization. began during this period. There was expansion of trade and commerce because of formalization of banking. Banking industry expanded, based upon which trade and commerce expanded. With the expansion of banking, trade and commerce, there was also the emergence of a middle class. And for this middle class, the source of its wealth was not inherited land. It was trade and commerce. And this middle class, as it gains strength, it will be this middle class which will give leadership to the French Revolution centuries later. Are you with me? जो फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन के टाइम पे मिडिल क्लास ने बागडोर संभाली, उसका जन्म इस कमर्शियल रेवोल्यूशन से हुआ. The Renaissance also coincided with the scientific revolution. Scientific revolution. Basically, scientific knowledge now became a new source of valid knowledge, you know. Earlier also knowledge has always existed in some form or the other in every society. What was earlier the source of knowledge? Scriptures. Authority figures, very importantly the church. Yes or no? So दुनिया में क्या सही है? कुछ भी कैसे होता है? बच्चे कैसे पैदा होते हैं? बारिश कैसे होती है? कौन बताएगा? चर्च ऑफिशियल्स बताएंगे कि जब इंद्रदेव खुश होते हैं तो बारिश होती है. ठीक है? But now, with the expansion of scientific knowledge, all of these scientists were key figures in the Renaissance. Kepler हो, न्यूटन हो, कोपरनिकस हो, गैलीलियो हो, इस टाइप के जो लोग थे, they basically, you know, the kind of knowledge, the theories, the explanations of the natural world that they came out with, they challenged the scriptural knowledge or whatever the scriptures said. That also dented the authority of the church. Church एक चीज बता रहा है, ये लोग दूसरी चीज कह रहे हैं. And there was wider, you know, what they were saying, the scientists were saying, was gaining wider acceptance. Are you with me? What do we know Newton for? Huh? Force is directly proportional to acceleration. Mass into acceleration. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. जिसको भी गुस्सा आता है उसको यही पता होता है. And what do we know Copernicus for? Basically for asserting the heliocentric theory, that sun is the center and earth is one of the planets revolving around it. Earlier, or the church view was geocentric, that earth is at the center and everything revolves around us. Okay? So a lot of what these guys said was clashing with what the church or the scriptures would say. But which was the biggest scientific contribution of the Renaissance period? Sorry? Printing press. The scientific method, absolutely. It was not this scientific discovery or that. Na Newton ke 3 laws ya printing press. It was the discovery of the scientific method itself. Please appreciate. The scientific method was discovered during this time as a new basis of valid knowledge. Scientific knowledge matlab या scientific method matlab knowledge collected through or based upon empirical evidence. ठीक है? And later on, many centuries later, when sociology emerged as a discipline, it emerged as which discipline? Scientific discipline. It is this methodology that sociology or the early sociologists adopted to study society. हमारा मेथड कब पैदा हुआ? रेनेसा में पैदा हुआ. ठीक? Renaissance was characterized by humanism. Humanism. Humanism मतलब basically human beings, placing human beings at the center of all inquiry. Whether it was art and architecture, drama, science, human beings now became the focus of attention. Please appreciate, earlier also you have had dramas and plays and music and everything. But what was the central theme? It was divinity, God, angels. Are you with me? So गीत संगीत पहले भी होते थे, पर क्या होते थे? भगवान कृष्ण की लीला पे होते थे, राम जी की ग्लोरी पे होते थे. To draw an Indian analogy, okay, not in Europe, Krishna ji and Ram ji, but to draw an Indian analogy. But now, songs, drama, etc., they were on, human beings were at the center. Ab Shakespeare ke plays, if you are even fleetingly aware, किस बारे में है? जूलियट, क्या नाम है उसका? रोमियो एंड जूलियट. आई वाज कंफ्यूजिंग इट विद जूलियस सीजर. हाँ, किस बारे में है? किसके बीच में? भगवान से प्यार, भगवान की भक्ति नहीं, इंसानों के बीच में प्यार. Secondly, it was characterized by realism. Realism. Realism matlab as opposed to idealism. Idealism means portraying things in a ideal fashion, how things should be perfect. Realism means portraying things as they are. Are you with me? So, if you look at, say, Shakespeare's writings, does he talk about like a perfect kind of a love story or something? Or, the perfect, this thing, life or anything? No, all of his plays, etc., they are characterized by a very deep realism, filled with jealousy and treachery and all of that. Yes or no? Because that's how real life is. There was a philosopher, political philosopher, writing about this time, Machiavelli. Have you heard of him? He wrote The Prince. in which he talks about the nature of political rule. How should the ruler be? He says, Machiavelli says, it is very interesting. He says it is difficult. No, it is best if a ruler is both loved and feared. It is best if the ruler is both loved and feared. लोग आपसे प्यार भी करें और आपसे डरे भी, तो सबसे आइडियल सिचुएशन है. But since the two seldom go together, he should be loved or feared? Feared. He was not talking about some ideal situation. Are you with me? But how things really actually are. And third, क्या फीचर है? एम्पिरिसिज्म. Humanism, realism, and empiricism. Three key features of the Renaissance period. Empiricism means based on empirical evidence. ठीक? You've heard of Leonardo da Vinci? Why have we heard of him? Like in what context? Mona Lisa. He was a polymath in many ways, like an all-rounder, what we would call today, right? And he was also a scientist and a painter and a all-in-one. He used to, so he wanted to investigate the human body. But there was a sacredness associated with a corpse, a dead body. So he would pay people who were called, grave robbers. They would rob graves, take out the dead bodies and give them to the early scientists like Vinci, so that he could actually cut and see what is there inside the human body. Are you with me? So that is how the scientific method, with its emphasis on empirical evidence, emerged. देखोगे नहीं काट चीर के तो पता कैसे लगेगा शरीर के अंदर या ह्यूमन बॉडी में होता क्या है. That was the emphasis on empirical evidence as the basis of true knowledge. These were the key features of the Renaissance period. Now, when sociology emerged as a discipline many centuries later, or some centuries later, did it have any imprint of the Renaissance? What was the focus of attention of the discipline of sociology? Which relationships? Human relationships. Human social organization. Yes or no? And what was our emphasis upon? How society is or how it should be? How it is. Humanism दिखता है, realism दिखता है. And do you also see an imprint of empiricism? Of course. And the adoption of the scientific method. So the Renaissance period has a very clear imprint on early sociology. Whether it was the emphasis upon human relationships and seeing them as they are rather than as they ought to be, collection of empirical evidence and application of the scientific method, including mathematization, objective processing of data, all of it is a gain of the Renaissance period. What is empiricism? A student is asking. What's empiricism? Based upon empirical data or evidence. I'm not saying something because मुझे gut feel है या माता रानी ने सपने में आके बताया, ठीक है? I'm saying it on. What is true knowledge? That is the thing. It is empirical data which is the basis of true knowledge. True knowledge can be in the nature of a revelation also. Okay? But during this period, empirical data or evidence became the source of true knowledge. ठीक? Moving on, shall I move on or you want half a minute? Do you want to note down if you are noting down something? I want to take a half-minute break. Sitting here. So, wrap up whatever you're writing and then I'll continue. ज़्यादा ही फ्री हो गए हो आप लोग. चलिए, लेट मी एंगेज यू. सो कंटिन्यूइंग, गाइज स्टॉप दी क्रॉस टॉक, है ना? चलिए, कंटिन्यूइंग, वी आर डन विद द रेनेसां थिंग, राइट? यू गेट अ सेंस. वी आर नॉट गेटिंग डूइंग वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री, सो आई एम नॉट गेटिंग टू मच इनटू रेनेसां कहाँ था, क्यों था, क्या था, ठीक है? बट दिस थिंग इटली में सेंटर्ड था, यूरोप में हुआ था, आर्ट एंड कल्चर, डांस, ड्रामा, म्यूजिक में नाच गाना हो रहा था, और देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ फ्लावरिंग ऑफ कल्चर ऑफ सॉर्ट्स, ठीक है? एंड इट हैड सर्टेन डिसर्नेबल characteristics such as humanism, empiricism and realism, which also got reflected in early sociology later on. ठीक है? Moving on to Enlightenment period. क्या था ये? Also known as the age of reason. What was this age of reason or enlightenment? बताइए, the boy with the बुलंद आवाज. What is enlightenment? Try do better than that slightly. Okay, brother. Yes. Scriptures were? That's correct. That's correct. But this was sometime in the Renaissance period itself. The Enlightenment, friends, Renaissance was basically a period of cultural flowering. Enlightenment was more a period of intellectual ferment. in Europe. During this period, some new philosophies were outlined which challenged the traditional systems. Are you with me? Immanuel Kant he described enlightenment simply as, and I quote, the freedom to use one's own intelligence. The freedom to use one's own intelligence. Immanuel Kant. All right? Matlab now people were free to apply their own mind. In other words, you do not have to necessarily accept handed down knowledge or whatever you have been told by the traditional sources of knowledge. Are you with me? अपनी अकल लगाओ. बताई हुई बातों पे मत जाओ. Just because it is mentioned in an ancient scripture or because the ठेकेदार्स of religion say it is so. Are you with me? So the Enlightenment era intellectuals, they started applying their own mind, to borrow Kant's phrase, to analyze various social phenomena. For example, during the period of Enlightenment, you have what is called the social contract theory that emerged, gained ground. Social contract theory. In the writings of scholars like, absolutely, writings of scholars like Hobbes and John Locke, और क्या नाम लिया आपने? रूसो. They're all clubbed together as social contract theorists, though there are important differences in their writings. But for our purposes, this will suffice that they all gave some version of a social contract theory. Basically, this was a theory about the nature of the state or government. Okay? It was a theory of the state. For instance, friends, Hobbes wrote the Leviathan. The Leviathan. Leviathan refers to a big and monstrous entity. ठीक है? A big and monstrous entity. Big and powerful entity. जैसे हिंदी में बोलेंगे किसी ऐसी entity को पूतना, है ना? To indicate something is very big and powerful and monstrous. So the Leviathan referred to the state. The government is this very big and powerful entity, right? So, what is or why and how did the government emerge? What is the rationale behind the existence of government or state power? That is what he is trying to explain in this book. For this, these guys rely upon this concept of what they call the state of nature. State of nature. State of nature is what? Imagine a state of human existence before the emergence of government or any sort of authority or power. Okay, that is what they call state of nature. Long, long back when there was no government, no ruler. Are you with me? What is your sense? How was life of man in the state of nature? Before existence of any government, authority, tribal chief, whatever authority in any form. जीवन कैसा था जब कोई सरकार नहीं थी, कोई मोदी नहीं था, और whatever. Unpredictable था. Egalitarian था, she is saying. Huh? I hear somebody saying egalitarian था, brother. हाँ. Self governed थे लोग. Please raise your hands now so that I can put a face. There were more crimes. People were fighting because there is no sarkar. Self-sufficient. Khujli. Yes? Dominance of caste. No. No, you've misread the situation. It is basically, a long back in human history when there were no, whatever you want to call them, like, there were no power, wielders of power. Huh? Yes. Conflicts. Absolutely. So you guys are on the right track. According to Hobbes, life of man in the state of nature. Life of man in the state of nature meaning a pre-government stage of existence. ठीक है ना? Life of man in the state of nature was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Life of man in the state of nature was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Well, it was not a nice situation to be in, simply. It was a situation of war of each against all. Are you with me? There was no authority. There was no person who could sit in judgment over the actions of others. That's what governments do, right? There was nobody to impose any sorts of rules and regulations. So everybody would do as they pleased. Might was right. So imagine if we are in that state of nature, right? And he kills a buffalo, that I will eat it. Then he's sleeping in night and he will kill him and take the buffalo. There's no stopping him. Then she plucks some berries, that I'll have them. She is more powerful, she snatches them away. Are you with me? There is no stopping you. So it was Matsya Raj, or big fish eats small fish. Everybody lived in constant dread. मुझे मार दिया तो, मुझे whatever तो, And because of such pitiful existence, because everybody was living in continuous fear of violence and death, people voluntarily agreed upon, or they entered into a contract, a social contract, to give up some of their powers in favor of a particular person. So we guys are living in that continuous fear of each other. Are you with me? So we say, yeah, too much, this is getting difficult day by day. It's not easy to pass another day like this. So what do? This guy here, he looks quite reasonable. Okay? All of us will agree upon whatever he says. Okay? So he is who? He is the first government or tribal chief. That is how government or political authority arose. As it was a result of a social contract. A contract amongst the members of the society who voluntarily give up some of their power, vest it in one person. And why do they vest it? For their own good, for their own benefit. Because I want my peace of mind, yes or no? My security of being. That is why I am surrendering some of my power, my volition in his favor. And I'm agreeing to abide by, along with you guys, agree to abide by whatever he decides upon. That is why he is emerged as more powerful than me. Clear? In other words, political authority is born out of a social contract, or a contract amongst the members of the society voluntarily agreed upon for their own sake. ठीक? Now this social contract theory, may I continue if you're done writing? May I? This social contract theory, outlined by various philosophers from Hobbes to Locke to Rousseau, they all, just to a word of caution, all of them were writing different things, but all of them subscribe to this notion that government is a human social construct, right? It's born out of a social contract. This social contract theory posed a very direct challenge to which theory? Sorry? The divine theory of kingship. The social contract theory basically questioned the divine theory of kingship. Not kinship, kingship. In other words, lot of the monarchs justified their rule as born out of divine sanction. भगवान ने हमें नियुक्त किया है, या हम खुद ही भगवान हैं, या उसके वंशज हैं, something of the sort. That's what the kings would claim. So they sought the legitimacy of their rule in divine sanction. Right? But these guys said what? What is the source of political authority? It is no divine sanction. Political authority is simply a result of a social contract. We human beings, sometime in the past, would have surrendered some of our powers in favor of one. So it's a human institution created by human beings. Are you with me? That is why it became possible for the French Revolution to take place. For the revolutionaries to challenge the authority of the monarch, the long reigning monarch or dynasty. Yes or no? Now, given that people have entered into a social contract, right? So we have appointed him, surrendered some of our authority long back in his favor, because he appears to be a reasonable guy. And we are doing it for whose good? His good or our good? Our own good. But if this guy is not up to the mark, he is incompetent, then what? What is the corollary? Then we can remove him. and in his place we can vest that authority in the other guy. Are you with me? Since we only had vested our power in him for our own sake, if we are not benefiting from his rule and etc., then we can take it back from him and trust another guy with it. In other words, this social contract theory provided the ideological basis for which form of government? Democratic and republican form of government. Yes or no? That this is what democracies do. You trust one guy with power. So if we've now trusted Modi ji with our power, we guys have elected him with the power of our vote. That is why Modi ji has all that power, no? Because he has so many votes, people vying for him. Yes or no? And if we find him incompetent, what do? We, during the next elections, Bhagwan na kare, we appoint Rahul Gandhi. ठीक है? Elect, not appoint, but elect Rahul Gandhi. ठीक है? So the social contract theory provided the intellectual basis to challenge monarchical form of government and in its place provided an alternative of democratic and republican form of government. There was another fellow, Voltaire. Okay? वो व्यंग्य में लिखते थे. मतलब he would write in, what's व्यंग्य in English? Satire, kind of satire. ठीक है? Satirical writings or कटाक्ष and व्यंग्य से भरी हुई. What's कटाक्ष? Irony and satire, yeah. So Voltaire wrote that, if there were no God, the ruling classes would create one. If there were no God, the ruling classes would create one. अगर भगवान नहीं है, तो सत्ताधारी बना देंगे. Meaning what? Basically suggesting what? That this whole notion of God or that organized religion serves whose interests? It serves the interests of the ruling class. It helps those in power to maintain, perpetuate their dominance. Are you with me? How does religion help those in power maintain and perpetuate their rule? We'll discuss at length later. Okay, but similar view is found in the writings of who? Later on, Karl Marx, who says religion is the opium of the people. अभी 2024 जनवरी में राम मंदिर बनेगा, देख लेना उसका डायरेक्ट नतीजा. Yes or no? Marxist, this thing is more nuanced than that, but point is that religion helps those in power to keep the masses in a state of, numbness of sorts. Are you with me? Adam Smith, नाम तो सुना ही होगा. कौन है ये जनाब? फादर ऑफ, हाँ, कौन सी इकोनॉमिक्स? फ्री मार्केट इकोनॉमिक्स, हाँ, या व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एज लाइसेंस फेयर इकोनॉमिक्स. ठीक स्पेलिंग है, गलत है? मोटा मोटी ठीक है, कुछ ऐसी होती है. एक आध एस जेड ज्यादा कम कर लेना, ठीक है. लाइसेंस फेयर और फ्री मार्केट इकोनॉमिक्स. His main work, the most popular one, is Wealth of Nations. The actual title is longer than that. An inquiry into the causes and consequences of the wealth of nations, or something to that effect. But paraphrased into Wealth of Nations, right? Wherein he basically lays down the ideological framework for industrial capitalism and free market economy. What does he say? Let us try to appreciate Adam Smith. We are wrapping up. Those of you wondering कि 8:30 तो हो गए. So Smith, just write down a sentence that will capture his philosophy. Smith Sahab says, it is not from the benevolence of the baker the butcher and the brewer it is not from the benevolence of the baker, the butcher and the brewer that we expect our daily bread. It's an incomplete sentence. What are we saying? Benevolence means large-heartedness, udarta, generosity, okay? Or somewhat of a concern for others. It is not from the benevolence of the baker. Baker is the guy who bakes bread. Butcher is the kasai, or the guy who supplies you meat. Brewer is the guy who brews wine or whatever, liquor, right? So it is not from their generosity or large-heartedness that you expect your daily dinner. You guys are studying in Delhi. You've come from, left your homes behind and you have a tough life here. You would have a lot of grocery store owners supplying you things at the doorstep, or the Zomato guy delivering you at the doorstep. Why do they do it? Are they concerned about you? Do they love you? Are they really, or are they, is there a lot of sympathy which is generated in their beautiful hearts? That बिटिया कितनी दूर से आई है, परेशानी से गुजर रही है. I should do my bit to help her. Is that the intent? No. Then what drives them? What drives them? Their own self-interest. They're not doing it for your sake. They're doing it for their own sake. So if I'm a grocer and I don't supply you things at your doorstep, you will take your business to the next guy. Yes or no? And I want to retain your business. That is why I am providing you the best services which are possible. Are you with me? So please complete the sentence. It is not from the benevolence of the baker, the butcher or the brewer that we expect our daily dinner, comma, but from their concern for their own self-interest. Concern for their own self-interest. In other words, friends, being self-interested, being selfish, thinking for one's own self, is it good or is it bad? It's good. Greed is good. Why is it bad? Please appreciate. if each of us is very, very self-interested, we anyways are. But earlier, prior to Smith's writings, self-interest was looked down upon, frowned upon. Mean banda. Yes or no? But the greater good is served if each of us operates according to our self-interest. Please appreciate. I put in a lot of effort in my teaching. Why do I do it? Do I love you? Do I know you? Do I care for you? Why do I put in a lot of effort? I really do. My sincerest effort. For my own self-interest. Yes or no? But please appreciate, that doesn't mean I will shortchange you. I will serve you to the best of my ability, but not for your sake, for mine. अगर आप सक्सेसफुल होंगे तो किसका फायदा होगा? मेरा फायदा होगा. होगा नहीं होगा? And that is this thing. So, pursuing our individual self-interest, we all will strive to be the best at our jobs. We will do our best to serve the wider society in whatever capacity we do. अगर मैं अकाउंटेंट होऊंगा, मैं चाहूंगा मैं बेस्ट अकाउंटेंट हूं. अगर मैं सोशियोलॉजी टीचर हूं, मैं चाहूंगा मैं बेस्ट सोशियोलॉजी टीचर हूं. आर यू विद मी? अगर मैं आईटी इंजीनियर या कोडर होऊंगा, मैं चाहूंगा मैं बेस्ट कोडर हूं. उससे फायदा किसका होगा? खुद का तो होगा ही होगा, इन दी प्रोसेस समाज का भी होगा. ग्रीड इज गुड. What is industrial capitalism? What is the underlying motive of all economic activity in industrial capitalism? It is profit. Profit for whose sake? My profit, not yours. My profit. Yes or no? And that is not morally, that is not socially harmful or bad. It is acceptable. किसने बताया हमें? श्री एडम स्मिथ ने. The invisible hand of the market forces of demand and supply will ensure that the resources of the society are most optimally utilized. Governments should not intervene too much. If market forces of demand and supply are given a free hand, what will happen? What will happen? The resources will be most optimally utilized. So self-interest, industrial capitalist economy works on the basis of the pursuit of self-interest. The legitimacy to self-interest was provided by the writings of Adam Smith. And hence the industrial revolution became possible. Yes or no? एडिसन ने बल्ब बनाया क्या आपके और मेरे लिए बनाया कि इनकी जीवन में रोशनी ला दूं, बेचारे अंधेरे में सदियों से जी रहे हैं? नहीं. जो बनाया बनाता बाद में था, पहले पेटेंट कर लेता था. यस और नो? जिसने स्टीम इंजन बनाया, जिसने कोई भी इन्वेंशन किया, किसके लिए किया? सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट में किया. And whom did it benefit? The wider society. That is how, friends, the Enlightenment era writings, philosophies, created a new intellectual framework for the occurrence of the world revolutions. And the transformative changes brought about by these revolutions necessitated the establishment of the discipline of sociology. ठीक है? चलो. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. हाँ बेटा.